What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into Barley Studios. I'm so excited to bring you into this playlist again for this awesome project. What you may ask, we are making and continuing the TikTok live creation of a from the grave 3D tumbler sculpted from Sculpey original. Now, as you can see in the previous video of this playlist, which was session number 1, we created this overall blocked in kind of silhouette of a gravestone here. We have it tapered from the bottom to the top there, and I also created kind of like a stone block square at the very bottom also. Now, a lot of that was done on TikTok live, so you were able to see me kind of sculpting at a different angle. But as of right now, we're going to continue into the second TikTok live. So this is session number 2 we're about to start rolling into. But before we hit that time lapse, I just want to kind of describe what I got going on. So I want to try to introduce quite a few different textures. Now, as I make more gravestones moving forward in the future, they probably won't be this big, but I will probably try to incorporate as many textures and different types of cemetery gravestone type of artistry into some of those gravestones. And I want to make sure that I can kind of capture at least a lot of that in this build. So I was playing with the idea of kind of building out a kind of frame around the top of the gravestone before it actually goes into the topper, which kind of really will bring out the overall look of it quite a bit. As of right now, you just kind of see the lower, like 3/4 of the tumbler and the gravestone, but we want to make sure we give it a lot of like concrete and stone texture for all of those washes and the dry brushing to really sink into and to go over. So I know this is kind of an odd angle here, but this is a very large subject that we're sculpting on here, and I am talking to those on TikTok live in the camera up above the right hand corner, so you can kind of see that I'm kind of talking to people, describing what I got going on. Now, if you're not able to check out this in a live format, then definitely just check out this playlist here. I will do some solo videos where I'll be talking specifically or making particular items for this build specifically for YouTube. So for instance, I may make the topper, which is a large portion of the build, specifically for YouTube, or I may do that on a YouTube live, which will be a live video, and maybe I'll condense that down into a time lapse with voiceover later on down the road. I also plan to build out the entire base, hopefully, and have that ready to go for session number 3. Now, that might not be completely finished out, but I want to get the actual gravestone to a point where we can kind of almost complete it out by the end of September. So we're getting close to that day. I really want to kind of get it locked in. Now, painting would probably take 1 or 2, maybe 3 sessions, and I want to have the entire thing, for the most part, pretty much done by Halloween, and that will require me to do some things on my own off the camera. So if it is integral to kind of keeping track of the overall project on the playlist here on YouTube, and that way you're not skipping a whole bunch of content, I will include it here. So just be aware, come back to this playlist if you're just now catching up, and you'll be able to see all of the videos in their entirety here on YouTube. So I decided to go with, instead of a brick texture around the edges, I wanted to do a cobblestone. And there's a reason for that, which you'll see here shortly. I want to incorporate a bunch of different shapes and textures. And I really wanted to do just a really kind of like stone texture, kind of like as if an old mason had put a bunch of rocks from the surrounding, like maybe farmland, into a mold and then poured mortar into it. And it just made this nice, really cool cobblestone effect. Obviously, a lot of gravestones are poured with mortar into molds, or they're casted, and then they're kind of they monogram whatever they need to on the front of them. I don't know how they make gravestones nowadays, but I'm assuming that a lot of those traditional ways still kind of run true for mason work. Let me know in the comments, do y'all know any ancient ways to make gravestones, and if so, do they still follow some of those practices nowadays? Kind of interesting to look that up and maybe learn that on the side. But as you can see, we're just really starting off very bland with these little medallions here. So I'm just cutting them out by hand in just general circular shapes. Some of them are oblong, some of them are just kind of just weird shaped. I really don't want there to be a rhyme or reason, and if there's a little bit more of a gap between some of the stones, and I do have more of a mortar joint, that is completely okay. So I intend to do this on both sides, running from the concrete block base of the gravestone up into where we disappear into the topper there. Now we'll probably continue a little bit of that cobblestone effect up and into the topper, but I'm going to probably try to do a different type of texture on the topper itself. So we'll kind of incorporate it in, make it blend and kind of feel like it's at home with the original sculpture we're doing now, but we'll probably incorporate some different things on the topper. I would like to probably make it a little bit more ornate, but this will kind of be a see as we go type of thing. I don't really have anything planned specifically in my head, so I like to just kind of get an idea of how the part that I'm working on at the time looks before I really move on to the next stage and say, this is definitely what I'm going to do for this portion of the build, and then we'll move forward. So it's just kind of one step at a time, and you are kind of just along for the ride, enjoying the creation process. The great thing about being the viewer of this content is not only do you get to see some of the means and ways that I sculpt some of this, but you also get to see it in a time-lapse version. So you get to save all of that time and really get to enjoy the background music, my voiceover in a lot of these videos, and really enjoy the overall creation in a lot faster pace. As you can see there, we got almost a cobblestone down all one entire side. I did feel bad because this was facing away from my TikTok live. But of course, this is just part of the process. Trust the process, and then it'll all work out in the end. Now, as you can see here, as we move on to the other side here, I've already got a few of the medallions on there. Now, don't worry, I know these are all the same shape. I did use the lasagna press to mush those out, so they are all the same thickness as far as their depth. But what we'll do is we're going to add some intensity to them as we continue with the creation process of these. Now, I do not believe that I'll be able to get to that in this session number 2. Of course, I am talking to a few people on TikTok Live about processes and how I like to create some of these things. But as far as cutting these out, they do take a bit of time, just because you got to roll it out, you got to cut it, you got to put it where you want it. I do a little bit of blending in this video, but not an absolute ton. Now, this is the part that really kind of tore me away from the medallions for a little bit, and I have to finish the medallions later, is I wanted to give it kind of a blocked in look. Now, a lot of gravestones will have like a right angled lip all around the exterior of like the front or the back, and we are going to continue with that fashion. So what I do is I just go ahead and lasagna out a large piece of clay here, and I will cut it into 2 sections, lay them on top of each other, kind of gently press them down, and I will lay that over the tumbler, and then I will anchor it at the very bottom and slowly work it up the edge. Now, that's going to follow the silhouette of the gravestone, so you will see that it kind of curves with the overall shape of the gravestone there, and you'll see that kind of like hourglass look, as it were. I really do think this adds a little bit of ornateness to it, instead of it just being just one big stone piece of work. And I think this just adds a lot of variety to it. So we'll blend this in nicely to where it looks like that this is kind of casted with the original mold of the gravestone, perhaps, or it's just something ornate that's added after the fact. Whatever the means, or however you'd like to imagine that these are added, I just think that they're kind of framing in the front and the back, and they're adding a little bit of separation from the front and the sides. So if I decide to do a different texture around the sides, the back, and the front, then I can do that. I do want to do some different textures. I just don't know at this point in time during this part of the video where I wanted to take it. I really intended at the time just to do the cobblestone on the sides, but at this point in time, I'm almost thinking about doing a cobblestone on the back. Now, I do believe I would like to incorporate a few more skulls. So here in a moment, you're going to see I'm going to pull out some skull texture, and we're going to go ahead and create some awesome little skulls on some of these cobblestone textures. But that is a separate video, so just look forward to that. I'll probably try to release that in the next day or so. We'll get to that portion of the build. It's really cool to see the cobblestone really come alive with adding a little bit more meat, blending it in, giving it a overall mortar type texture that our acrylic washes and our dry brushing is going to really be able to sink into in different shades and different grunginess. But as you can see here, back to what we're doing now is I'm applying a stippled texture with different means. I'm using tin foil for deeper cuts and gouges, and then what I'm doing is I'm using a coarse sandpaper. It's an old sandpaper, it's not really good or anything, but I'm just applying gentle pressure, not enough to deform the object, but enough to apply a concrete texture. Now I will have to do this again right before baking, but that is completely okay. I'm completely okay with redoing some of the texture work later on down the road, as long as it kind of finalizes the overall detail work before we add it to the oven to be finalized. So I do believe on the back of the tumbler, just for a spoiler here, I do believe what I'm going to do is I'm going to incorporate a little bit of a skull cobblestone texture around the bottom corners. And then as it goes up into the back of the gravestone, I might incorporate like a cobblestone and then maybe like a lost soul type of texture. Maybe like there'll be skulls that like have like wisps coming off of them. And then of course those will be blended with the same overall texture and color tone as the rest of the sculpture. But maybe I can maybe tone their eyes in different shades and things like that. So I'm really going to make the back a little bit different than the sides, but I do kind of want to keep the overall cobblestone texture and tone and theme throughout the majority of the build, at least for the base of the gravestone. As we move up into like the front, where it says, it's going to say maybe like RIP carved into it, or some kind of ornateness on the front and on the back into the topper, I might kind of switch the tone, the texture up a little bit and make something a little bit different. That way we can just really not just create just a really diverse piece of artwork here, but we can really just kind of have fun sculpting a lot of different textures on even just one subject. It's a way for me to challenge myself in my sculpting abilities and really just enjoy the process. If I'm not enjoying the process because it's too bland and it's not really challenging me, yeah, it's okay, it's fun to sell artwork like that, but this is really where I enjoy it. I really enjoy doing something new, incorporating new mediums and new textures and new processes in anytime I can do that, I really like to do so. I did decide to add a little block towards the very bottom of both sides, the front and the back, and that's going to kind of block in, apart from the concrete block around the bottom, it kind of frames in the back and the front, and I think that it really looks cool when it's all said and done, and it kind of frames like a picture frame-esque like look to the back and the front, and it kind of creates a separation between the bottoms and the sides, and it almost gives us a different canvas to work with as far as sculpting. It really creates a little break, a little bit of isolation, and it looks like that's kind of just framed in. I may incorporate a little bit of that frame towards the top as I decide what I want to do with the topper itself. Maybe I'll make the cup topper at the very top a little bit thicker as far as this, and maybe make this a recessed area across the front where maybe the wording is just a little bit more prominent, as opposed to the sides having the sides and the back having all that texture, if that makes any sense. As it really kind of comes together and it kind of finalizes in the next two sessions or so, you'll really start to say, wow, all of that really makes sense. It really kind of, it was described really well, but at the time it's just kind of chaos as far as bringing what is in my mind into your mind, so that you can kind of imagine what we have going on here. But this is where I kind of almost end this session of TikTok Live. I got kind of tired, and I'm trying to restrict myself to specifically the time frames that I had scheduled ahead of time. So if you are catching this video recently, you can go onto TikTok Live. You can maybe make sure you subscribe here on YouTube, and also make sure you hit me up on TikTok. Depending on what I'm building, and maybe to determine what I'm live on, whether that's TikTok or YouTube. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the like and notification bell, so you can see future videos as they come out, whether in this series or in the future. I hope you guys really did enjoy this video and my rambling along the way. I will catch you guys on the next awesome session of this series. Later, guys.